Welcome back to another episode of The Trenches. This is where we have crypto's most important conversations with the most important people in crypto. I'm absolutely thrilled to bring Matthew Ney back to The Trenches. He was actually here for the inaugural episode where we gave a recap of Solana Accelerate, and he is a leading analyst at Messari, specifically focusing on the Solana ecosystem, where I think he's the principal lead there. Also, a really smart guy, graduated from MIT. Like, you forget in crypto how impressive many of the people are that we just interact with on a daily basis. But welcome back. The purpose of this is really covering the state of Solana. And you do a terrific quarterly update on the Solana ecosystem, looking at top-level metrics, but also looking at some of the key trends across DeFi, RWAs, consumer. And what I want to do today is unpack some of that. As many people know who follow me, I've been a little bit critical of Solana, and the fanboy season is not to the same degree that it was. I think Solana is struggling in a number of areas. And what I want to do today is unpack with you what's elapsed this past quarter. Where is Solana continuing to just be an incredible technology platform and blockchain and community? But then what are the areas where clearly Solana hasn't had the growth that, let's say, everyone expected? And maybe if we have time, we can actually jump into what are some of the things Solana and the community could be doing to improve. Does that sound good?
Definitely. No, I appreciate you having me here.
Terrific. Thanks for being here. Let me know if I missed anything on the intro of you.
No, that sounded great. Yeah, write the Solana report. It's coming out soon. Waiting on some final edits, so we're getting a little sneak peek here, and then it'll be on our website at Messari.io. Free for anyone to go look at all protocol reports that we do, and we'll be on the website hopefully end of this week.
Terrific. Well, I'm excited. We have a sneak peek today, and I think we're going to be dropping some alpha. And I actually saw the report, a draft version of it, and some of the tables and details are incredible. Really gives the opportunity to understand, again, where Solana continuing to outperform, and then what are the areas where growth is modest, let's say, instead of exponential. So With that, I think we can start a number of different places, but I think let's start at the top level. You have a chart that wraps up the entire Solana performance, everything from revenue to validators to transactions. And I know when I was going through that, I had some questions. And so maybe what you can do is pull up that chart. Let me click yes here so you can share. Pull up that chart, and then we can, maybe start with, like, what were some of the things holistically that stood out to you? Like, what was the most unique data points you saw on this?
Yeah, I think if we just start from the top, financial market cap 30% quarter. If you really look at like the rest of the ecosystem, Bitcoin, Ethereum also did the same thing. So you can chalk that up as just relative performance compared to the majors. We saw a big increase after the Liberation Day and everything. So from a circulated market cap price, everything was very positive. Then you quickly go to real economic value, fees plus tips in the Solana land. We saw a 67% decrease, which I think was the end of the meme coin season. Also a little unfair because we had insane quarters in Q4 and Q1 with the AI agent meme, with the election, and then also with the Trump launch in Q1. So we knew these numbers were going to come down. But did we know they were going to come down 67%? Probably not, which is right where the conversation kind of gets a little interesting about what was the actual performance. Was it great? Was it bad? Was it neutral?
Yep.
And then, so I don't know if we want to double click there or keep going into network, where that was when we see decreases in these, except for validators, when we see decrease in average transaction fee, that's good. Network is performing, upgrades are coming. We saw the SIMD that released or increased block size from 48 million CUs to 50 million, which is a good sign. We just saw that went live from 50 to 60 this past month of July. We're getting it SIMDs already to get up to 100. So network is really increasing, which I think was a very positive trend in Q2, especially with the release of Alpenglow. We're going to get into it later with the Jito BAM nodes and validators. And so the network itself is humming. It's getting better every day. And that's really seen. And then we go to ecosystem. We kind of have some mixed numbers there. DeFi TVL increased 30%. I think you could also kind of chalk that up with just the Solana price increasing 30%. A lot of Solana in all these protocols. And so, but you always want to see that number go up. I know the Solana itself isn't really focused on TVL, but as long as that metric goes up, that's a good thing. Then you go down to DEX volume. Once again, you just had an insane quarter in Q1 with the Trump launch with 4.6 billion, and that decreased to 2.5. Still bigger than Q2 and Q3. But when you see that's really compared to Q4, you say, okay, the trend just slowed down clearly in Q2. And then stablecoin market cap decreased a little. I don't think that's anything to worry about because we just had an insane jump once again with a Trump launch with the 12.5 bill in Q1, but staying relatively positive and healthy at that 10.3. Now we compare it to Ethereum and Tron, still huge gap, but really entrenched Solana at that number 3rd spot with the stablecoin. But I don't know where you want to go from
Terrific.
there.
Let's jump in. So I want to start with real economic value, and I think one of the things that like blockchains at the end of the day are networks, and the value of the network and the ability to place a transaction, like the more valuable the network is, the more people are willing to pay. And so REV or Rev is a pretty good indicator about how desirable it is to land transactions on the network. One of the things that's interesting is this is again, was it 66% decrease, if not more, in REV? That seems pretty remarkable. And even if we chalk part of that up to Trump launch and other things, like that still seems pretty concerning. Should we be concerned about that, or is that just Solana as usual? And in this sort of, there was an anomaly in time. Like, I'm curious if you looked at the monthly, are we actually pretty static except for that 1 month where Trump happened, or generally is it slowly declining?
Yeah, so this is market cap for first real economic value, just in total, and you see it just mooned on January 18th when Trump launched, and then we saw relatively lower than December. I mean, there's the whole AI agent meta meme, and so like if we look at like the dailies, we saw a little pop over May, which was released the when all the like the meme coin wars kind of started, when a lot of people were back in the trenches a little bit, and we kind of tapered off through the end of the quarter. So yes, we are seeing like a decline in real economic value, but if you go compare it to all other ecosystems, still number 1 across the board. I know Binance Smart Chain was flipping it on the dailies and weeklies a little bit near the end of the quarter, but from a total quarter, it's still dominating the real economic value when you compare to other chains. But compared to Solana itself and some of the high periods, we are seeing a little bit of decrease. But I think that's just an overall market sentiment thing. And if we were to go look at today's value, it's probably higher than it was a month ago.
Yeah. And it seems to me that if you're a developer and looking to launch an app, especially a consumer app, but any sort of app, Solana is still the standout place for most of them to be launched. I think there's a couple areas of exceptions. One is if you're launching anything involving perpetuals or like derivatives of perpetuals that utilize underlying perps positions to create new financial products. Like it seems like Hyperliquid clearly is the place where we see deals being done in that space. And if you're doing stuff in RWAs, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit unclear if Solana is the place to make those happen. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I agree with you that there's certain places where Solana is a key foothold and others where perhaps some of the growth that we're seeing in crypto is not concentrated in Solana. It's leaking or it's going to other places versus in Q3, Q4 of last year, I feel like everyone was all in on Solana and there wasn't much talk at all about Ethereum, wasn't much talk at all about Optimism or any of these other rollups.
Yep, no, definitely agree. And I still think, like you said, consumer, and I think you put it perfectly when you're talking with Nick from Celestia on one of your previous calls and talking about it. Consumer still dominated on Solana. And as we see, like the perps and stablecoins that are real world asset, I think I highlighted that in the report. I think the real world announcements was a very bullish quarter for Solana. You were at ShipperDie, and Scale.die, and Accelerate, and we saw a ton of announcements. We saw just Centrifuge, Maple, all these big real world asset protocols come, BlackRock, the Accred coming into Camino and Drift Institutional. So I think from just a pure qualitative perspective, going to that conference, it was awesome. Wrote a Solana real world asset report too. That's already live. We got published about a month ago. If anybody wants to go check that out. And so the announcement part of real world assets, very, very bullish. But if you come over and look at like the actual like metrics on real world asset RWA.xyz, it's still, if we go to the chains, it's still a whole different ballgame when you're talking Ethereum, even ZK Sync, and then Solana down here at 4th, was 3rd for a little bit, but Aptos just jumped it in the last week.
Do we know what's driving the changes for ZK Sync? I mean, because from my understanding is I actually met the ZK Sync team, by the way. They're really smart. The CEO there, like incredible, I don't know, like decentralized maxi. in a good way around like we can't compromise on certain things if we want to actually call ourselves a blockchain. And I think they've been running a number of really good partnerships to try to bring more activity to the chain. Do you know? I mean, that's huge. Was it 2.4 billion? Did that say?
Yep.
What?
Yeah, it's a
Do we
massive
know?
number.
Do we know what's driving that?
Yeah, so in late February, Tradable, I'm assuming is the private credit tokenization liquidity platform, jumped as soon as it launched with 1.7 billion, now up to 2.1. So a lot of it is coming. Majority of the value is just coming from Tradable with all these private credit pools where
Oh
you
wow.
have North American rent financing, US buy now, pay later, Latam fintech. And so the private credit area on ZK Sync, which I think comes a lot with the privacy of a ZK Sync L2. And I think that's the main driver from where ZK Sync came from.
Cool. All right. Well, this is really helpful. So let's start with infrastructure. I know everyone's going to be like, why are you starting with infrastructure? I want to talk about perps or apps, but I think we can't actually talk about Solana without talking about some of the major Solana upgrades that took place. In particular, you talked about the average transaction fee going down substantially. Now, you're a data guy, I'm a data guy. There's a number of reasons that could be going down. It could just be that there's less desirable state on Solana. But like generally from the analysis done, would you say that it has to do with key upgrades, whether it's Alpenglow or others, that actually made it much cheaper for literally the average transaction to land on Solana? If so, just give us an update on what drove that in your view, and then obviously we all know what that means. Cheap transactions mean more activity, more transactions, more types of things that can happen. But if you have any additional insights on what this unlocks for the network.
Yeah. So we see, I think this one is a great place to start where we look at like daily non-vote transactions. And like we saw that like it stayed relatively flat, a little up and to the right. So like the people are still using the chain.
Yep.
The transactions are still going through. Now, one little cause, daily fee pairs, just a way to like a different way to say daily active addresses or just different users on the chain, whether they're multiple bots or whatever. But that did decrease. And I think that is just from a trenches slowdown.
Yep.
The meme coin meta was slow in Q2. We've seen it pick up now with the launch of Bonk, which we can get into later. But so fee pairs did go down, but the number of transactions went up, which is a good thing to see. People are still using it.
And are you defining a fee
so
payer as somebody that goes beyond the base transaction, either in a priority fee or a Jito bundle?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So I see. So basically, if reading this correctly, there's people spending less money for high priority transactions that need to land in a certain order, but the overall number of transactions is continuing to increase at a gradual pace.
Yes, exactly.
Got it. Okay.
So, and that's a good way to like state a foundation for where we're going next, where the median transaction fee and average transaction fee, I mean, median transaction fee is basically zero at this point, and has stayed there ever since the priority fees went into the protocol. Now we can see average transaction fee boomed for the Trump launch when everybody couldn't get through, but the network still stood up, and which is a good point for going down 2 years ago, and like a great milestone for the Solana ecosystem, handled 36 billion. But then we see the average transaction fee continue to decrease, and that can be kind of twofold, a double-edged sword, is where less priority fee transactions just went through, less nobody had to pay ginormous transaction fees to get real transactions through. But from SOL terms, that's really what you want to see for the average transaction fee, median transaction fee, those going down because the price doesn't actually affect the actual transaction fee you're paying. But I think that just becomes from Agave 2.2, 2.3 going through, and validators fully upgrading to the 2.0, the Agave 2 validator set, and then Jito also incorporating that. So the upgrades are here. They're coming every day.
And one of those, I remember seeing a lot of chatter on X around, specifically, we expanded block sizes, right? Like, wasn't that a major upgrade? Is that one of the upgrades you already mentioned, or is that a separate set of upgrades to actually enable more transactions per block?
Yep. So we saw SIMD 207, which raised the block limits to 50 million, and that was from a 48 to 50. That was the first jump just to test the water, see if the network can handle it.
Yep.
And that was implemented in Q2. It was passed back in Q1, but it fully implemented in Q2. And then we saw in July of this past year, or of this past month, SIMD 256, which raised it to 60. So that was another a full 25% change from the beginning of the year. and we're already trying to double that from SIMD 286, which is in discussion in voting phase, or not really voting phase
And that
yet,
goes
but
to 100 million.
and that goes to 100 million. So we could see the TPS, the amount of transactions per day, double from the beginning of the year, which is great for validators, great for Jito validators, and great for the network overall. Is just more and more transactions can get through in every 400 millisecond block.
Yeah. And for the trenchers, what this means is it doesn't necessarily mean your transactions are going to get radically cheaper, because generally with Solana, it's less about the amount of transactions and more about which state or which items on the blockchain everyone's trying to access. And so if there's a hot meme coin, everyone's still going to be paying competitive rates in order to get that meme coin. But what it means is, as the amount of apps on Solana continues to grow and sort of the priority state is getting distributed across many different states, now there's just going to be more block space for the average transaction to land, whether you're playing a game, whether you're doing a simple perpetuals trade or something else. So really optimistic. I mean, it's pretty incredible. That's the thing about Solana that truly impresses me is, I think mine's scale or die, the hat from the sort of the technical focus workshop, but like really scale or die is the way Solana views the world. There's like zero comfortability, zero giving up. It is continuing to push the bounds of what's possible. And to that, like that really does separate Solana from almost every other chain from what I've seen.
100%. And I don't know if you want to go into the perp discussion, but that's something that I think is almost exhibit A for
let me tee
that
this
one.
up. That's great. Let's definitely jump there. So I had a tweet. I should probably pull it up, but you can find it on my history. But basically, I was saying, to me, there's 4 major trends occurring in crypto right now: perpetuals, institutional, stable, which institutional is like RWAs and that whole segment of traditional finance coming on chain, stable coins, and consumer. And Solana to me is only the category leader in consumer. Like from everything I see, if you're building a consumer product, we invest in a lot of consumer products. There's nobody really trying to build elsewhere. Perhaps someone abstract. And I love Luca and that team, and I'm really excited to see what develops there. But generally, Solana continues to be the focus. Even if teams were building on Base before, a lot of them are moving over to Solana. We continue to see that trend taking place. So of those 4 categories, Solana continues to be a king in my view. And I think Solana is well positioned for the other 3, but it's not the category leader in terms of RWAs, in terms of perps, obviously not perps, and then it was just based on volume, and then stablecoins. When I was at StableCon, it was really enlightening because I was talking to people from around the world looking at stablecoins and what types of both nation state and large sort of Web 2 players or fintech players, where they're trying to go. And like Solana was virtually not in the discussion. And I think that was really eye-opening to me. So we're going to talk about those 4 areas throughout the rest of the pod for whatever we have, another 40 minutes. And so let's start with perpetuals, because I think this is by far the most, I don't want to say the most important category for long-term success, but it's certainly the one where there's insane amounts of revenue generation possible today. And Solana and the Drift team are continuing to improve. There's a ton of new products, including Bulk, including Bullet, that are going to launch on Solana. But clearly, Solana is not the category leader. Let's talk about perps and what you're seeing in Solana and any commentary you have.
Yep. Yeah. So for as soon as Jupiter launched perps, they've been dominating the Solana L1 mainnet of game there. What's interesting is Drift is starting to catch up. You used to see it as Jupiter was the 90% market share. Now they are around 80-75% in Q2, and so the average daily perp volume fell a combined 28% to 879 million. Now, if we go over to Artemis, that has like a great chart for like all of them. You could just see. I mean, I just add hyper.
Shout out John Ma and the Artemis team.
Yep. Huge. Love this chart right here for perps, and you see, without even having to add all the rest, but Hyperlink was just dominating the game.
Yep.
And Jupiter is somewhere in the second. Now, Jupiter is interesting because they only have the majors, Sol, ETH, Bitcoin, and then Drift has all the long tail. But if you go and really just show just Drift and Jupiter, what's interesting is Drift is starting to catch up and is eat into some of the volume on on Jupiter, which
Yep.
is really interesting, especially with the Drift
Do
team.
you have a
And
thought on why Jupiter? Because like Drift is such a Solana native team. They probably started 2021, I would guess. Cindy and David, highly respected in the Solana community. And by the way, Meow is too. I love Meow, but I was actually surprised how Jupiter really dominates this space. I will say that Jupiter is a little bit more easily accessible to people in the US because it's not gated by a VPN. I can't say I have or have not traded on any of these perpetuals platforms, but I will say if you're trying to from the US, it's easier on Jupiter. Do you have a point of view on? Well, I guess first starting off, why has Jupiter been winning for so long in perps? And then beyond that, BAM is a pretty big release from the Jito team. Shout out for that incredible announcement. How do you see perpetuals evolving on Solana?
Yep. Yeah. So I think you said it best. I think Jupiter just dominated for so long because of ease of use. You're trading in the trenches. You're using Jupiter as your aggregator. Them going over like the whole DeFi super app, the whole Jupiter portfolio, and so there was the one-stop shop. Never had to leave Jupiter. But as the market's really ticked up here in July, you're starting to you want to go down that risk curve. You want to open up a 5x long on Pump, or you want to just basically get down the risk curve. And so that's where Drift really dominates Jupiter because Jupiter doesn't have those other those pools or those options. And so that's why we see Drift here late July starting to really get 50-50 and almost and taking over Jupiter one of the weeks here in July, on July 14th.
Wow.
And so I think that's really where the game is within Solana, is if you're going down the risk curve as the market heats up, Drift is going to dominate there. The whole BAM upgrade was huge for them, which we can get into. But is the question is like if Jupiter is going to go after the longer tail assets, or are they just going to stay with all the majors?
Yeah. And so maybe talk about BAM, and then specifically, do you know any Solana teams except for Drift signed up to use it? And do you have any views on any of the up and coming perps products that you're incredibly optimistic about?
Yes. So I guess one I'm really optimistic for is Bullet, the old Zeta team.
Yep.
I think that is going to be a really interesting use case for network extensions. We really haven't seen anything take off. I know there's the whole Magic Block engine for gaming, which I'm also excited about, but haven't really seen a ton of momentum for games you can really go play today. But something I'm optimistic for network extensions in general. But Bullet, which I think mainnet is imminent. I think we've heard August or September from the team, and a lot of behind the scenes things being pushed and everything there. So I think from the Bullet team, really excited. The numbers, the milliseconds, the latency is something that is I'm excited for. To
Yeah, it's like 2 to 4 milliseconds, if I remember correctly. It's pretty mind blowing, to be honest.
Yes,
versus Hyperliquid is 80 seconds. By the way, everyone's talking about Hyperliquid is the best trading platform out there, and by the way, I think it's kind of is from a decentralized point of view today. But like it's 80 milliseconds to do trades versus 2 milliseconds, and
exactly.
And like why that's important is that maybe you're going there. I didn't mean to cut you off, but like I had a chance to talk with Tristan and the team, and one of the things is if you're running a book both on centralized and decentralized perps, there's arbitrage opportunities across them. You need a different trading strategy when you have long periods of milliseconds. When you have long block times or delays, you can't run the same strategy because you have latency. But when you're starting to get 2 to 5 milliseconds, you now can run essentially the identical strategy on both decentralized and centralized, and almost like pair trade them in a way you couldn't do before.
100%. Yes. And so I think it'll be interesting to see the actual adoption now with Unit and be able to bridge Sol natively over to Hyperliquid. It is way easier than having to go from Solana to Base to Arbitrum, or Solana to Arbitrum, and then go over through the Hyperliquid bridge. And now, so that is one downside to the Bullet now is just they are closer, but with the Unit bridge, it's a lot easier for just anyone to go and go over to Hyperliquid. But the being close to home and running on Solana is definitely going to be an advantage that Bullet will have over Hyperliquid. And their latency is quoted to be faster, like you said.
Yep.
And so that's what we're really excited for Bullet. But when we go to Solana mainnet and talk about Drift and BAM, what is interesting about the block auction marketplace that Jito team released a couple weeks ago, or I think a couple weeks ago at this point, still not live, but basically it allows for perps specifically, and we're talking about this, it allows teams to do asynchronous or application specific sequencing, application you could, whatever the acronym is
Yeah.
that you want to name
So
it. They named it something
call what
differently.
it is, ass.
Yeah, it is asked. They didn't want to say it in their blog post, but it's application specific sequencing. And so what's awesome for the Drifts of the world, the Jupiters of the world, is they could prioritize cancels,
Yep.
which outside my name or not my expertise, but basically for a market maker, this is huge when a price jumps a certain percentage in a single block or a single time period, and you're able to go and cancel stale orders before smart takers go and pick up those orders and basically steal money from you. And so that works. They haven't like ironed out the details, but they're able to do this through what they call plugins, and they can run these on the BAM nodes. And the biggest thing is they are separating the block proposer and the block executioner and on the chain, which I've, to my knowledge, Ethereum's been doing this since Flashnet and since the merge in 2022. And basically, if you're Drift, you can go say, hey, I want my block of 10 transactions. The first 5 are all these cancel orders. The next 5 are whatever taker, maker, whatever transactions you want. And that helps market makers be incentivized and also allow them to stay profitable, provide tighter spreads in these blocks. And then Drift will build that block, send it to a BAM node that's going to start on a permission set of Jito specific nodes first, and then hopefully decentralized later, open source and everything, and kind of the ethos of the chain. But then that Jito BAM node will send it to a Jito validator, and through cryptographic keys and everything that goes into making sure that the actual validator can't censor any of these transactions, and then it'll go through and the market maker will be happy. You as a user taker will be happier because you'll have tighter spreads, and the liquidity, the depth on all these trades will just get deeper and tighter.
Yeah, it seems like an incredible upgrade. The only, I don't even want to say negative, but the only consideration I've heard in talking to teams is that, you know, BAM itself is going to cost fees. There's going to be fees to use BAM. And if you're using BAM, you still have to pay cancel fees. Like, it's not like cancels are free. It's like you still have to pay money. And so compared to other solutions out there, it's like the best solution Solana has. But I think the perfect state would be free cancels, which is what Hyperliquid does today. And so that's like the goal where ideally Solana gets to. And I know there's a lot of work. I'm told there's a lot of work going on at Foundation about this. Everyone's super tight-lipped. I've heard things and talking to people, but like it seems like it's very, very, small group of people working on this. I hope they figure it out. But that said, from what I have heard, that's going to be the next evolution of where we go, such that cancels are free. Because then you can actually have a truly robust, high-frequency trading platform. Otherwise, it's always going to be inhibited if it's going to be more expensive to do app-specific sequencing than not. And if you're going to have to pay to cancel your orders, then you still got to think, do I really want to place this order if I might need to pay to cancel it? And it's just going to be an additional overhead for people to start trading on, or specifically the market makers to trade on decentralized books.
Yeah, 100%. And what this step does is it decreases that fee, because before, or right now currently is Solana's implemented, is where those market makers would have to outbid all priority fees and have the highest priority fee to make sure they're at the beginning of that block. But now it just decreases it. And so where market makers only have to have if they're a whitelisted address or they're highlighted as a maker, they can make sure from a decreased, still have to pay the base fee, maybe some priority fees. It's all up
so
to the
it's
team
much more de minimis than what it would be before.
100%.
Because you're not competing in the global state food. That makes sense.
100%.
Cool. That was great. Well, I think we did a really good job of perps. Is there anything we didn't cover on perps?
I would say, I think that's it. I don't know if we want to talk about the kind of just the overarching thing with, like, I think Phantom implementing the Hyperliquid builder
let's
codes.
talk about that. So why don't you share that, and if you have any thoughts on it? So what I saw, by the way, is I saw data that showed it was performing really well initially, but then it kind of, I don't want to say fell off, but I don't think it had exponential growth that was sustained. Maybe you have some different data than what I saw.
Yeah, I saw, trying to see if I have it. Sweet. Yeah, I have on this dashboard, and we look at the Hyperliquid builder codes and what they've generated. So it really took off when they went live in the beginning of July. And so for everybody that is confused what a Hyperliquid builder code is, basically it's just an API that you can get into Hyperliquid's order book. And so Phantom implemented them, which was like a huge wake up call, I think, to the Solana community. A lot of people on X, Twitter, saying that like, oh, they Phantom, obviously a very fan favorite of the Solana ecosystem, chose a perp platform that's not on Solana or Solana mainnet. And so I think that's why this conversation is happening, why people are starting to wake up and say, what is the perp landscape on Solana? But revenue really jumped up quickly to the first couple weeks. But yes, like you said, they have kind of tapered off a little bit. That could be also because markets cooled off last couple weeks.
Yep.
But they've gotten $1.5 million in revenue just from implementing this thing that's pretty seamless. US user, haven't been able to use it, but like what I've seen from screen shares and everything, they it seems very fluid and very easy to use, and they use that unit bridge, and it's super seamless from a user on their mobile app. And so I think that was very eye opening in the Solana ecosystem for the perp landscape in general.
It was kind of like the final nail. Like in talking to a lot of other leading venture firms, it was very clear that Solana was losing in perps. And this was the final nail. Like, wait, like the most Solana aligned major wallet is now implementing Hyperliquid before they implement even a native Solana perps platform. Like that was the final nail where it's like, holy shit, everyone's got to really be focused on this.
100%. And so it'll be interesting if we do see a bullet get implemented and mainnet come out. Does Phantom switch? Does some of these backpacks, some of these other wallets, Soulflare, implement other a more Solana native team, or is just Hyperliquid by far and away still the main platform to use? And as just the users come into the ecosystem through Phantom, what is the actual perp platform that people are using?
Yeah, and liquidity is a pretty awesome moat. Like we've talked to a number of teams recently building on Hyperliquid, and there's types of financial primitives only possible if you have substantial liquidity. And so, like for example, I think UXD is an example in Solana where it was a stable coin that was actually algorithmically backed by a set of longs and shorts and delta neutral, like way back. I mean, this was 3 years ago. There just wasn't enough liquidity on Solana to make it work. And there's other types of new products we've seen only, I'll say like, just like we used to say only possible in Solana, only possible in Hyperliquid. Things that could not exist apart from the liquidity density on Hyperliquid. So definitely something we're watching very closely. I know everyone's watching very closely. And unlike the fads, like crypto goes through a lot of fads, Bitcoin L2s and other things. And by the way, I think restaking, I think all of these are eventually going to materialize into some sort of functional product, but clearly overhyped relative to the actual traction. I don't think Hyperliquid is this. I think Hyperliquid has a lot of teams building on it, and just I think it is going to keep growing. At the end of the day, their ecosystem is going to continue.
Yep. Yeah, and kind of wrap up the perp platform. I think if anybody, and as we see, I think there's a lot of downside risk to Solana not really focusing, which we see they are clearly focusing on the perp platform with Drift and BAM coming out with this huge upgrade and hopefully Alpaglow and everything. And if there's one team that I'm confident that could figure out if you're able to make a performant clob on a decentralized mainnet, it is the Solana team. We see all these upgrades as we started the show with, and so really excited for the perp wars to continue with Monad coming out with Kuru and Purple and Mega ETH with GTE coming out. Fogo is an interesting one. I think that could have some performant clubs, and so the race is on, and it's going to be us as
fun.
As users and consumers. We get to watch it and see the best man win, and that's just ultimately better for us.
Place your chips appropriately. Chips appropriately. All right. Well, I think we covered perps really well. By the way, great conversation. This is a ton of fun. Let's talk about, so we have institutional, which I'd say RWAs are a key part of that. I also think, by the way, stocks, on-chain stocks, I think what Robinhood's doing as well with their own network is part of that. Let's talk about institutional. You had in your table, we can stay here, but you had in your table a big stat on sort of RWAs growing on Solana. But compared to the excitement and the energy on other networks, I feel like it's a little bit underperformed to the rest of the ecosystem. I think the other thing is the XStocks has not performed to the way I thought it was going to. I mean, it seems like the most revolutionary thing to be able to buy tokenized equities on Solana. I mean, that is transformative for Solana, for users globally to not be able to access the these markets 24/7. But I've been a little surprised about why it hasn't got more traction. So walk us through your view on RWAs and Solana. What's been going really well, and in your view, I don't know where's the opportunity, and what does Solana need to focus more on?
Yep.
And by
Yeah. So we
Solana,
see.
by the way, Solana. So that way nobody at Foundation gets angry at me. When I say Solana, I'm talking about the builders, the community, partners. I'm talking about everyone, not just like Solana Foundation.
Yep. Yeah. No, totally agree. We're still a huge fan of Solana, and it just these are all good critiques. But yeah, so what we saw in Q2 was a ton of announcements, like we saw at Accelerate. A lot of exciting things. Ondo is killing the game with USDY and OUSG. They're dominating the Solana real world asset place. And then you see a Cred, Biddle, some of these institutional funds that are starting to test the waters outside of Ethereum. We all saw them launch at Ethereum within the last couple of years, and now they're starting to go and say, "Hey, what's this Solana chain? We hear about the high performance, low fees, and let's go put a little money there and,
Mm-hmm.
and test it out." And so I think similar to how stablecoins really picked up, still obviously huge on Ethereum L1, and now they're going to test the waters and use Solana and starting to deploy capital there. And so if we look at obviously USDC, USDT, the stable coins, FDUSD,
Yep.
but like USDY, 175 million today. We have on-chain yield coin, which is a new one. I have to look into that one. That just really popped up in the last couple of days. And then Ondo, short-term U.S. government bonds. So it's really just U.S. Treasuries are really the name of the game in Solana real world
Yeah.
asset. But
Do you know if like a lot of here's the thing, we invest in a lot of Solana companies. I don't think a single one of them has said, I'm going to go buy US Treasuries on Solana. Like I wonder how much of this is real traction versus these companies and foundations with extremely large balance sheets incentivizing growth. And by the way, that's fine. I think that's totally fine if they want to. I'm just curious though, how much of the RWA narrative and action do you think is really organic, and is there any part of it that's really taken off on Solana apart from incentivized
yeah,
growth?
I think you can see that from just holders. Now, a lot of these are not able to U.S. customers, institutions, and so that's one blocker. But you see the holders for a lot of these are there's only 7 OUSG, there's only 8 cred holders on the network, and so I think from that's why I go in and say I think they're just testing the waters and seeing what are the regulations around deploying on Solana. What are we able to actually do? And so that's where they're starting to test waters, and that's why there's still a huge gap from almost 500 million on Solana to 7+ billion on Ethereum, and um, there's still a lot of room to grow. And then when we go to X stocks, I think that's a different story. I
Yep.
think that's kind of the very first like when stablecoins launched, there was no reason for a US person to use any of these stable coins because we still have all the Bank of Americas, the Chases of the world, and just it's easier for us to go withdraw cash. But from the other areas of the world that just don't have access to the US dollar, that's really we saw traction grow up, and just as people became more aware, used them in their local places to go and transact, and then say, oh wow, this is a huge use case. And so I think we're going to see that similar growth with public equities, especially as more platforms launch, the more spreads tighten because there's still some premiums on Tesla, the S&P, and working out the like 24/7 trading over the weekend, how all that works out. And so we're still like in this very early innings of public equities, but we still have over $9 million in Tesla on chain,
Yep.
which is unheard of a year ago. I think that was all the vision of bringing public equities on chain, but you have with Robinhood launching, I think
Yep.
people are just going to wake up to the more of the fact, and we're going to see more users come into them.
Yeah, and Robinhood is launching their own chain for all this activity, right?
Yes, Robinhood
Do
chain.
we have
I think
any
I don't know if that's the name.
idea of when it's going to go live or anything around the launch strategy? Have they revealed anything there?
I think the only thing I've heard about that is 2026.
Oh, so
Is
we're a
the
ways out.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot. I think they're also fell into a little bit of problems when they said we're able allowing you to trade OpenAI equity, and then the team come out and say, yeah, this is not real, or
I
this is
remember
not
that. Yeah.
this is not approved by us. So I think if they try to separate the two from just public equities and private markets, I think if they just push forward ahead, we could see that earlier, maybe early 2026, late 2025. Q5 2025. It's probably my guess, but we'll see when the Robinhood team actually comes and deploys more.
Yeah.
But
I think it's probably the biggest area where Solana has an opportunity is, well, I think stablecoins, which we'll get to, but also the tokenized equities. Because again, I think everyone's fallen in love with Ethereum because Tom Lee is a CNBC whisperer, and basically able to rally the crowds. But at the end of the day, Ethereum is still a slow chain. It still isn't really practical for any sort of trading activities. Solana is the place where a lot of this can truly happen. Of course, Coinbase and Robinhood, they're going to launch their own networks and their own ecosystems as they should. But for any company trying to start and enable new types of trading and custody of tokenized equities, I feel like Solana is the place where this will happen. And so I hope that teams are continuing to come to Solana and focus here.
yep, and something I'm really excited about is I don't have it here, but I have it in the report, is where on-chain equities get really exciting when we start talking about Superstate and the opening bell, is where platforms can go IPO on chain and they don't have to touch the Nasdaq. There is no worry about the how do we make sure the price on chain is what's trading actually on Nasdaq. There is no spread there.
Yep.
And so I'm really excited for that. And when these Web3 crypto companies really decide, hey, we're going to go IPO on chain instead of, and that's going to be the only source of liquidity. I think there's going to be a lot of bumps along the way, but I think that's something that is only possible on Solana
Truly
today
only
with
possible on
Superstate.
Solana. Yeah.
Exactly. And so when Soul Strategies goes live and through this platform and actually issuing equity, and they don't have to deal with all the headaches that Robinhood is probably going through now too, with all the regulations and how does that actually work behind the scenes. And would hate to be a lawyer at when we're figuring out all these issues, but that's really exciting, is when companies truly go public on chain and there is no other place that they are going public.
I agree. Do you have any hot takes on the treasury company Bonanza taking place?
Yeah, I think the treasury area is crazy. I think listening to a lot of really smart people are in this way, and in kind of calming a lot of concerns I had, and saying as long as they're issuing equity, a lot of the downside risk is mitigated, and we can't really, and then we'll have the larger players go and acquire these maybe not as good operators, not as good teams, and kind of consolidate that space and kind of worry a lot of the concerns that I think a lot of people had. That might be mid-curvy, but it's not my area of expertise. But I think the more institutional capital that comes in, the lower the downside is if there is ever going to be another. I don't think that. I think that means that we're not going to have another 75-80% drawdown into the next bear market or whenever that happens. And so as we look at Solana specifically, we're really, the main two players are DFDV and Soul Strategies, and we have Apexi, GSR, Galaxy also kind of trying to catch up and play in that game. But the two main ones are DFDV and Soul Strategies, and their main metric they're following is the Soul per share.
Yep.
And so as long as they increase Soul per share, which is interesting, and I think the argument does have a lot of traction for investors or people that want to go and get exposure to Solana, is like this is actually a way to you'll outperform price. If you just buy one share of DFDV or Soul Strategies, you'll actually outperform the price based on the ways they go and accumulate. And Solana is also interesting because of how much like locked Solana, discounted Solana you can actually go and find just in the market, which just isn't possible really with Bitcoin. Yep. and really Ethereum too. Yep. So I think it's interesting. I think one thing is like the bull case for Tom Lee is he can go on CNBC and bull post Ethereum tremendously. And there is no one person that has really come to Solana to really become the champion, which we see is like the qualitative aspect of a lot of these treasury vehicles. Michael Saylor, Bitcoin Jesus, yep. We saw him. Now we're seeing that with in Ethereum. And so I think it'd be interesting if there's a Solana one that pops up that really has that champion that can really bull post Solana to enter that conversation.
I agree. I think they're pretty good vehicles for financial engineering. I mean, basically, it's a way to get leverage to an underlying asset. And so in a way, the more pure play they are, I like some of them more, the more pure play they are, because then it's just sort of a math game. I am really excited to see how these evolve, and I do think you'll start to see ones that are have more breadth, let's say, than just focusing on one asset and just accumulating it and holding it. And I overall think it's a pretty good thing for the space, and there's relatively low downside for some assets. And really,
Yep.
it's just a duration where you're issuing 5-year bonds in most cases, and as long as the asset is above where you bought it over the course of 5 years, you're pretty much fine to continue to exist. It's but if you start to get to situations where you have these extremely volatile assets that start doing this, I think that's when you'll start to see either blow up or maybe just like lots of acquisitions that take place just for the underlying NAV.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the Athena one? I know that's not necessarily Solana, but it was interesting to see. I feel like that's the best one we've seen from a little down the risk curve of an asset.
I don't have a strong point of view. I haven't read enough on it. I mean, Guy is a really dynamic founder, and so if somebody can start to take public capital dollars and pursue, alternative strategies outside of the basis trade, I think he's a pretty good candidate to make it. So I'm
Yep.
quite optimistic, but I actually haven't read their paper or their memo to understand the strategy they're pursuing.
Yeah. Do you think after seeing that we could see a Jito treasury vehicle, a Jupiter?
I think Jito is too undifferentiated from Solana, and what I mean is it's basically just liquid stake Solana. That I imagine these players would just acquire Jito as part of their Solana strategy rather than a Jito separate one. Like it'd be hard for I'm just thinking about the average person to understand: should I buy Sol strategies or a Jito Sol strategies? And I think it's pretty tough for most people versus being the de facto Solana one. And you might have a mix of both like direct staked and liquid staked assets. That in the liquid staked assets, by the way, you're using in probably DeFi or in other ways to start.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's something to note note. Pretty awesome that the first staking ETF ever was a Solana one
Yeah,
with
exactly.
the Jito Sol tokens going into it. So I think that's pretty awesome that Solana has the first ever staking ETF.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we have about 9 minutes, and I think we have to cover stablecoins and consumer. So I guess I don't have much on stablecoins. I mean, in terms of the classical use cases of sort of business settlement, remittances, I continue to see companies like Visa making announcements on Solana. I just haven't seen a ton of transactions happening or really users having a completely differentiated experience using stablecoins. By the way, more broadly, generally, not just Solana. I think if you're on Tron, there's a lot of the world that's using Tron to send and receive stablecoins. Even BNB actually has a lot of stablecoin activity. How much of it is real versus not? That's always the question with BNB. But nonetheless, it is like one of the top 3 chains where a lot of this is taking place. I think it's going to be tough for Solana because we also have chains like Plasma and others that are stablecoin focused. And if you're just focused on remittances or payments, even checkout for different, like merchant checkout, I think a lot of these could really, just because they have singular focus, could do quite well. But, I think stablecoins are going to continue to exist on Solana and probably grow over time. I just don't know if I see Solana as being the de facto chain for stablecoins in the future. Do you have any hot takes on Solana stablecoins?
Yeah, I think from just the pure on-chain metrics, everything is looking good. A lot of that capital from the Trump launch stayed on chain, like we saw, fell a little bit from 10.3. As we see the people testing the waters now with the Genius Act not allowing the actual like yield bearing stablecoins, I think that was hopefully we revisit that and comes back as USDY has taken off.
Mm-hmm.
But from an actual like on Solana, it is interesting. I think you saw like the Visa, PayPal integrations into like their point of sale. Sad that it a little
Accidentally removed you there. Well, I actually removed the presentation, but for some reason, I removed you as well.
am I back?
You're back now. There we go.
Cool.
So that was funny. I removed your shared screen, but for some reason that also removed you. I'll have to ping the team and be like, by the way, this is messed up. Anyways, continue.
Yeah, learning as we go. I love it, making the live stream platform better. But yeah, I think with these integrations, they're all bullish announcements. But when you look at the behind the scenes, they're basically just transferring. You can go and yeah, sure, you can go to a gas station, use Fartcoin, but you're actually swapping between Fartcoin to USDC to USD, and the actual point of sale 7-Eleven, whatever the gas station you're at, actually only gets dollars. And
Yep.
so it's cool, it's awesome,
Yep.
but it's a bullish announcement that doesn't really have a ton on the on the back end. That's really awesome for actually just using wallets for
Yep.
every point of sale that you're interacting with. But it's a logical first step before that really exciting thing happens.
And who made that announcement? I think that's when we lost you. Is who made that announcement, or which announcement?
I think it was Visa.
Visa,
that
Visa
used
one, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's exciting. It's great that they're playing around with the ecosystem, but it's still early innings there as well. Is before we start to see I go up to the random bodega, buy a random sandwich, and actually
Yep.
use USDC on Solana, and they get USDC on Solana.
Yep.
And
And
so we're still a little ways
PayPal
there.
also started to make some major announcements around this too. I don't know if it's live. I haven't actually opened my PayPal app to check, but again, I think PayPal is a company. It's probably been the fintech that's underperformed the most over the past 4 years. I remember 4 years ago, they were the first major fintech to launch crypto buy, hold, sell, and it was revolutionary at the time. Their share price went up at least 30%. They made so much money. People open the app like 2 to 3x more once they launch crypto because you're constantly checking your crypto prices. And PayPal's in the catbird seat, and I think since then they've really fallen off, and a whole generation of new fintechs have come up and established dominance. So I'm not optimistic, but I'm hopeful that PayPal really comes up with a strategy. Because again, they're probably the best position of everyone in terms of merchant networks and users. I mean, they could start really driving a lot of volume very.
100%. And I like PayPal is the way I on board and off ramp based just because of Pi USD and the incentives there.
Oh, you do really?
And
Okay.
you get 1-to-1 from just go straight into Venmo account, and so
You don't use Coinbase?
No, not anymore. Just the fees were too much, and not I don't have to pay for Coinbase One or any of that. And so you just go to Pi USD, throw $100 into it, you get 100 Pi USD, send it to your wallet, and you have 100 Pi USD.
And then you got to
slippage.
Probably swap it or something when you go. And yeah.
Yep. But the only actual fees you actually get are just the whatever the slippage is between Pi USD and whatever you're trying to buy on chain. But I think that's great. So yeah, they have a customer in me, and so totally agree with where PayPal sits is they have an opportunity here.
Yeah. I guess we should wrap with consumer, because this is the area which by the way, we're going to spend the least amount of time on, but it's the area that Solana is arguably doing the best and continues to be a standout place for teams to build. Do this whole meme wars thing is kind of crazy when I read stuff online. People literally saying that like Pump is paying teams to FUD like random protocols. I mean, I feel like things are getting pretty wild in the meme space. Literally it's just paying for bot platforms to produce content. It's kind of deteriorated in a pretty tough way. And so I think what's great about Pump is they do have live streaming and actual like long-term creators are looking to build versus going to be a launch pad. But I think clearly the winner of the meme coin wars has been trading bots and Telegram bots. I mean, Axiom is actually is on track to do many hundreds of millions of dollars in annual revenue. I think Solana needs to keep expanding beyond meme wars. I think we've gotten too insular and focused on each other instead of the billions of people in the world that we're trying to get on chain. I even see that when teams talk about memes and what's going on in Solana. I'm pretty excited about gaming on Solana. I actually think the gaming will return at some point, and Solana is a very clear place where that activity could happen. In looking at either meme wars or more broadly in consumer, any interesting things you've seen over the quarter that you want to highlight?
Yeah, I think from just like the meme coin wars really took off in July, so I haven't really dug too deep into them. But obviously, you saw that the Bonk platform really launched. And I think what's interesting with Zora is like it's a different take on it, and so that'll be interesting to see if more teams like that come over to Solana. I think Time.fun is kind of similar in that way, where it's like a kind of a launch pad, but it's also like a very interesting different way of looking at what tokens mean in creator platforms.
Yep.
And yes, also on for consumer, excited to get my Seeker Solana Mobile 2. starting. It's shipping today, so excited. Going to get a lot of. I think there's going to be a ton of hackathons, incentives to go and build fun new apps there. So I think I'm going to be really focusing on, as soon as I get mine, just play around in the Solana Dap Store. So really excited for that. And then also the Solana Game Boy PSG1 is launching soon and launch along with their token. So excited to get my hands on that. They have this cool Pokemon style game where Solana Genesis, where you get to go play around and capture pieces of the white paper. So a little gimmicky, but it's going to be exciting.
Is so gimmicky. Wow.
Yeah, I think you're a little Tully running around and going to collect pieces of the white paper. So excited to get my hands on hardware. I think hardware is really cool when we're just staring at screens all the time. And yeah, so excited for gaming to take off too. I think the guns token coming over to Solana was big.
Yep.
One of the biggest like things that's crossed the chasm. But just seeing more games come out would be amazing and fun games to play.
Yeah. Shout out to Sleepagachi that's now live. They haven't implemented the Web3 portion. Yeah, but it was going to be coming soon, but their new game is live. They were on episode 2 of The Trenches. Go check it out. Really fun app that helps you sleep better. And it's actually a fun game to play. Definitely go check it out.
Has it helped you?
It has. Well, because it's something where you earn more. The whole thesis is there's games you play at night and there's games you play in the afternoon, but there's nothing you play in the morning. Perhaps Wordle. Wordle's the only thing that people like kind of do in the morning. It's like we want to win the morning, and you get more stuff for the game if you sleep better. And so that's a pretty cool incentive. Just like the walk and earn, it's kind of like sleep and earn, but instead of sort of an infinite loop of speculation, you actually can use this if you enjoy playing the game. And looking at the early revenue numbers, are actually on a pretty good clip in terms of revenue because people enjoy playing the game. They like up-leveling their characters. Very excited for gaming on Solana. I don't know if we're going to see a ton of breakouts over the next quarter. By the way, we should do this every quarter because this is actually an incredible conversation, both for me, but also all the people that are going to be watching clips and watching the full version. I don't know if I'm expecting anything transformational in Q3, but I do think gaming will be. I think it's fair to say we'll see one sort of standard game on Solana by the end of the year. Where by standard I mean everyone in Solana has tried it or engaged with it. It may not reach hundreds of millions of users, but something where, hey, like this is the game on Solana that is the standout. I think by the end of the year we'll reach it. I'm pretty optimistic.
Yeah, no, I like that because we're seeing a lot of teams build, and I know there's a ton of games out there, but yeah, that'd be awesome to have a game that just to go point to and be like, hey, you're a Web 2 gamer, go see if you like this game. And I don't think we don't have that yet, and so that'd be awesome to have a game to go point to that is like pretty fun that people can go and enjoy.
Yeah, we have most primitives. Hey, you want to buy stocks, go here. You want to trade crypto, go here. You want to do leverage, go here. We don't really have that on Solana for gaming. I mean, I Star Atlas, by the way, I think they're close to full launch or launching soon. I actually should check that out again before I say too much, but I think a fresh game coming in, there's a pretty big opportunity there.
Yeah, I think the Star Atlas clips I'm seeing seem really fun, but I think it's still in private beta or it's or like I think you can maybe get access to like a weekend public beta event. But a lot of the clips I'm seeing are pretty awesome. I know I've been waiting for Star Atlas ever since I got into crypto in 2021.
I lost a bunch of money on Star Atlas when I bought it, and I was like, well, of course this is a worthwhile token at whatever $100 million it was trading at. I lost a bunch of Star Atlas 4 years ago. And I'm definitely still not bitter at all about it. But I actually met one of their lead engineers there. I think I know his name. I'm not going to say it in case he's doxed. But they have a really interesting thesis about putting almost everything on chain and like truly making it a self-sustaining game with on-chain primitives. And I think it's a valiant mission, and I'm excited to see how they develop. All right, well, we're basically at time. Any final words on things, and specifically looking at Solana for the next quarter and what gets you most excited? I know we've covered a lot, but anything you want to reemphasize or new things?
Yeah, so look forward to publishing this hopefully later this week. You can find it, once again, free on Messari.io for the protocol reporting page and every protocol we cover. But then basically for the Q3 things I'm going to be really excited for is really seeing the meme coin war as a whole quarter of that action going. Looking into like the whole Pump token launch and being able to wrap that up and hopefully it's higher than it is today. And also looking at deep diving into BAM and seeing teams actually see if that's coming to vote, if the Jito DAO, and then also seeing upgrades to the Alpha Glow proposal, seeing if that's launched by Yen. I know they're having hopefully by breakpoint that is going to be live. So hopefully seeing meaningful adoption through that. And then seeing these digital asset treasury companies really increase and see how that comes another 2 months in and seeing that. So a lot of hosted things, like we said, love Solana and that's where a lot of the magic is happening on chain. And so blessed to be able to cover it and keeping on all things Solana, which is tough, but that's good. Hopefully it gets tougher and tougher every quarter.
There's very few people that know as much about the breadth taking place in Solana than you. Excellent report. I read the draft. Definitely check out the full report when it comes out. I'll make sure we link to it and quote tweet it from our account. So if you're following the trenches, keep doing so, and you'll definitely find it there. Thanks again for the time. Terrific conversation, and look forward to next quarter.
Can't wait.
Cheers.
Thanks, all. Bye.